Atiba De Souza, thank you so much for coming on the Edison Podcast. I appreciate you being here today. I know we've talked before on other places, but this is the first time you coming on this podcast. Thanks for being here.
Ed, thanks for having me, man. Good to be back with you again, buddy.
You say that now. We'll see how it is at the end.
Yeah, okay, so fine. I reserve the right to change my mind in 35 minutes.
There you go. Yeah, and I like to have fun. I like to have a good time, but we also want to have some good, thought stuff, and that's pretty much what we do. And I'm more of a conversationalist.
Yeah.
And that comes from radio, where you learn that when you ask a question, the person has about a minute to answer, so you can go back and forth and have a conversation, not just the guest talking the whole time. One of the things I want to kind of get into is you're in business. How long have you been in business? Have you been doing it forever? I'm gonna throw a couple things out here real quick. Was your family, was your family entrepreneurs, that kind of stuff? Or so there, now help me out. Yeah.
Yes. So I am a multi-generational entrepreneur.
Wow.
It's what we know in our family. It's almost what's expected.
Wow.
Right.
Right. So with your grandparents?
Yep.
What did they do?
So my grandfather was a pharmacist and owned, we're from Trinidad, and he owned one of the almost original pharmacies on the island. It was great because he was also back then the minister of health of the island, and he owned a pharmacy.
That's not talking like having government control over business or anything.
Right.
Not like they're trying to do that now.
We've been in business. Right. That pharmacy is still in operation today. And so, that's also part of it too. It's like we've not just multi-generational, but the businesses have been around a long time.
What'd your parents do?
So my mother still is a caterer. She owns one of the largest catering companies in the Washington, D.C. area. And before that, she was a restaurateur. My father, we don't have enough time to talk about all the businesses he's had, to be honest.
How many successful business has he had?
We don't have time to talk about that either.
Okay. Because usually serial entrepreneurs, they're not always successful. You're trying to, and that's okay. You got to make mistakes. You got to fail in order to learn what's best.
Yeah. He's one of those, who beat the average by a lot.
Wow.
And stuff he touches just turns to gold.
Well, it probably seems that way. I'm sure he puts a lot of hard work into it to get it there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So was there a lot of pressure for you to do this, to be successful in business because of what you came from, or was it more of a nurturing environment?
The pressure was definitely internal, and the nurturing was there, and it's interesting because when you grow up and you watch it and you're seeing it and you're around it and it's all you know. It's all you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at 13, I'm in meetings and planning sessions with my mother and her catering business. It's all you knew. And at 13, you have a seat at a table and people are actually asking, what is your opinion? And your opinion actually matters and people are listening. And so that's the nurturing side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You couple that with, how should I say, the lack of desire to ever have anyone else in control of me.
You're not prior military, are you?
No, not at all.
That's where I come from. I'm tired. I don't want somebody who is dumber than me, but just been in that position longer than me, can tell me what to do.
No, it's been this way my entire life. It's been, give me the information and let me go figure out which way I want to go. Don't tell me which way to go. Don't tell me how to solve the problem. I'll solve the problem. And so it's interesting. We talk about being dads. It's interesting seeing that as well in your kids. So they're now coming up on being the fourth generation of entrepreneurs. Um, and so it's interesting to see that thread that has existed for generations, right?
Hmm.
Um, the successful part, yeah, you know, and I dare say I put that pressure on my children as well. And it's a pressure in that, and it's not a, it's I hope not a negative pressure. It's one of, hey, if you grow up and you can look me in the eye, I've failed you. You need to grow up and put your feet on my shoulders and go up. And I think that was the big difference for me, especially with the success that my father had. Was it was always, could you be as good as your dad,
Gotcha.
right?
Right.
And I've told my kids from jump, you're going to be greater than me. So anything that you see that you admire here, know you already got it, and you can do greater. So go do greater. And they have. So I've been fortunate in that way.
Wow. That's amazing because a lot of families do not have, a lot of people are their first generation as entrepreneurs in their family. Most of them, they want the security of which they
Yeah,
think security. They think that the security working for somebody else when in reality we know there isn't any. The only security is working for yourself.
yeah. It's interesting because my wife, on the other hand, is first generation entrepreneur. And so she has conversations with my mother and she has conversations with her mother about the exact same topic and walk away with two completely different points of view.
Sounds like Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That's a great way of looking at it. I
Yeah.
never considered it in that manner.
Have you read his stuff
Um,
or listened
since
to it?
since '99.
Okay, well, don't get like that. All right. I'm just saying I knew about it. I understood all of it, but I never really listened to it. And then I dropped 50 pounds in the last 4 months from
Congrats.
walking. Thanks. You were losing some weight if I know, right, Rich?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And during that period of time, I listened to stuff all the time when I used to walk, but I didn't walk as much, but now a lot. And I listened to like everything they had because I did so much, and you forget certain things that are so obvious to you that you knew, but you're so busy doing everything else you totally forget it, and people don't understand. You really need to listen to that stuff. I mean, they redid it in 2016, and then now he has another one that encapsulates everything he put together in one, where they grab it from old stuff and put it all together, which is really good because you get all of it in one pretty much. And it's just knowing the difference what people think.
Yes. Yeah. No, and so I said it kind of tongue in cheek, but I did read that way and read most of his stuff. Sales Dogs, Cash Flow Quadrant. Matter
Mhm.
of fact, people ask me what's your favorite board game. Is Cash Flow Quadrant. I can see it right there, like it's that close to me. Okay, and the principles of some of the things that he taught in Cash Flow Quadrant, in terms of structure of business, is how we've structured all of my companies. So yes, his teachings are near and dear because I live them daily.
Right. And I don't think people really understand that until you listen to his stuff and understand, wow, and the first thing you got to remember is, uh, rich people won't pay their fair share. They already are. They're paying 46% of the taxes that are out there. And that's why the working man pays the taxes because they have no way to not pay taxes. And that's
Hmm.
not a negative on the working man. That's just how the tax system works.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah, and people and that's the biggest problem is they sell it so many other ways. The Robin Hood theory. About I don't have to tell you. And if you guys don't understand what we're talking about, just go get the book
Go read the books.
or listen to the
Go.
books. I like Audible.
Yeah.
I can listen to it at
Yeah.
almost 2 and get through a
2x.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's funny. You say that. I remember, when my kids were a little bit younger, my son is specifically, and he was coming, it was like his junior year in high school. And he started listening to the books that they were assigning him to read in school. right? Finding him and listening. And he was listening at 2 and 2.5x. And I was like, how could you listen? I was still listening at 1x at the time. And he and my eldest daughter were just laughing at me, like, how do you listen to stuff so slow? And it wasn't until I realized that they were doing it and getting it that I started challenging myself, and now can as well. And we can comprehend way more than we think we can.
Yeah. Unless that person talks really fast, then you can't go as fast. So most of these people who read the books, they read it slower, right? They're not like we're talking faster. And so I tell people I can do it too, but unless they talk really fast, then I can go 1.75. And it just depends. Yeah.
So even then, I read a study last year, and it said that the average human brain can comprehend 716 words a minute. The average human can read as fast as 120 words a minute. And they were talking about why people get bored.
Yeah. I fall asleep when I read.
Yeah, because your brain can do so much more when it's listening.
Right.
Because we can't talk fast enough for the brain to keep it stimulated. But yeah, we digress.
But you're right. I mean, and once you figured, I accidentally found out. I didn't have a clue a couple years ago that you could go that fast. I was down in San Diego doing a walk after a TNC, and I accidentally hit my phone and it went faster. I was like, holy cow, I totally can understand that. I went, that's a 1.5. Let's try 1.75. Let's try that. Yeah, let's go. And ever since then, it's funny because like my wife can't. It's just not her thing. She can't do it that fast, but she also reads a lot of novels. So
yeah, I don't do those.
I don't either. I do whatever is for business and all the other stuff I listen to, unless it's Huberman, then I listen to his podcast.
Yeah, and I'm nothing against people who read novels and need that, and that's fine. It's just I want to learn.
Yeah. Well, see, novels are fine, but I'd much rather watch a movie where I don't have to think. If I want to, you know what I mean? Right. If I want to read something do something relaxing, it's where it's a movie that is pretty easy and you don't have to think. And if it's really funny, it's even better.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you on that.
Yeah. All right. So when I was asking about the pressure and nurturing, because I've saw with one of our daughters who so I'm a vet, and so my kids got to go to college because I have a disability part of the thing when they got out, and they can go for free. They just have to pay for their books. And so she went to school and messed it all up. And we said, what are you doing in here? When you're messing this up, it's going to take you forever to fix your grades going forward. And she was all, well, you guys pressured me. You told me you had. No, we didn't. We just said, if you're not going to go to school, you have to get out and get a job. That's not pressure. That's life.
That's facts.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's why, because some people, and I don't want to say it's today, but a lot of people have that, and it depends on where you come from. They think that the pressure is just so much. No, that's how you make things is under pressure. Nothing's supposed to be easy, or nothing good is easy.
Ever.
All right. Is there anything? So you're just going to answer one? You sound like me and my wife on our first date. Closing question.
No, I mean, you're right.
She didn't talk. She's like, you didn't talk. I go, well, you asked me closing questions. She's like, what do you? Yes, no, yes, no. But one of the things people don't really look at is when they go into business, studying and listening to stuff. And what we have today that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago is access to so much stuff to figure stuff out so easily, or understand how to do things that we would have to hire somebody to, or find out exactly what they should be doing that we hire them for. Have you? And so I'm sorry, what do you do now?
Okay.
What is your business? Yeah.
Business. Yeah. I run a marketing agency. We specialize in video marketing, and I coach people on messaging.
Okay. And how did you get there?
It's the most circuitous path that you can imagine. I was a software architect for a long time.
You said architect?
And most people, software architect.
Oh, software architect. Yeah.
And most people are like, okay, how does that get you into marketing? And it's a lot simpler than you think, because as a software architect, the thing that I learned was, one, we had to teach systems how to communicate with each other. And then we had to teach people how to communicate with systems. And we had to reteach people how to communicate with each other in order for our systems to be effective. And so it gave me a really interesting bird's eye view on communication and how people communicate. And because I was building search systems, search engines, essentially, I learned that side of the world of search engine optimization, but I learned it from the inside of how the search systems actually work and how they think. That led me into a marketing and business career. Really, this agency since about 2005, and we got into video right at the beginning of the pandemic. We switched from written to video as our mode of communication medium,
which is pretty much what we all did. And I don't mean that. I'm not saying that. Please don't take that wrong. What I mean is it's a huge. It was like podcasting, right? I mean, I had a radio. I still do have a radio show. We recorded it even back in 2018, 19 with video, and then cut that up and put on stuff. But podcasting really didn't get into the video side of it until like I'd say 2020. Right around that same time. Pandemic, because certain software like StreamYard wasn't around at that time. Squadcast was, but it didn't have video at the time. And so there's been a huge push to do more with video and do more with that. And I could totally see that change around the pandemic time.
Yeah. And the reason behind that was really quite simple, Ed. You see, so one, I'd been saying it was coming for a while. But it came because what happened at the pandemic? In this country specifically, we were at the end of an era of feeling like we couldn't trust government, no matter what side of government, politics you're on. And we were entering into an era where we don't know what in the world is going on with the pandemic and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were in a massive place of distrust as a society. That's one. Two, we were also in a place where, because we were home on this thing called lockdown, well, we now needed to entertain ourselves. And we all had to make a choice. We were either going to read or we were going to watch. And by and large, we chose to watch. And so that accelerated the need for video. So now when you put those two things together coming out of the pandemic, we start to realize that what people need right now is to trust the people that they do business with. Okay? People don't, Big Brother is exactly that, Big Brother. And even corporations are falling, right? Heck, celebrities are falling. And so it's now a matter of, how do I connect with someone and know that I can actually trust you? And video does that.
Well, so I had a conversation with somebody, I think it was yesterday, about AI. And I was talking, because he's a huge, in the medical field kind of stuff and what they're dealing with. And we were talking about getting funding. He goes, the stuff in the medical field right now, if they want funding, they have to say it has AI in it. And then they get all the funding they want. And I stated that I think because of the way AI is coming out and what it can be done with it, we're going to get to a point where people are going to want to go back to how it used to be, besides seeing you on video, but really making sure that you are who you are, coming to your office, meeting with you personally, especially with big ticket items like buying a house, not necessarily buying a car, but the big stuff in life that costs a lot, to make sure you are who you are, instead of, because they're so close on making us look like a regular person.
There's place for everything. And it's about the responsibility of use. So let's talk medical, because we serve mostly medical, and you brought it up. I was having this conversation with my wife yesterday. My youngest is 17. She's the last one at home. And she had to make the annual doctor's appointment. And she said, I had just demoed something for her. And she said, I wish my doctor had that. And what it was an AI agent that you can call and have a conversation with and make the appointment. Because I hate calling, getting put on hold, and dealing with the people there. So I think there's a place for AI. There's definitely a place for the human interaction, and finding that balance and finding the ethical nature of that balance is where humanity is going to go. So we're in the age of video right now, and AI kind of came in, at least generative AI, because AI has been with us for a very long time.
Yeah, since the 50s.
Okay. I did my first AI project in 92. So, right.
Right. It's been around. It's just not been with people. It's been
exactly. It's not been mainstream.
Right.
Right. And so video, then we have this boom of AI that's happened. And to your point about the connection, I fully believe the next revolution in business is going to be community. And it's going to be those businesses that can truly build great communities that are going to survive, because that's where you're going to get that connection again.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond just I came into the office and saw you.
No, I understand.
Right? Because that's true what you said too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back to your point, so I'm spoiled. I have Kaiser because my wife works for them. I pick up they have an app. I can schedule my appointment in seconds. So I don't have to talk to anybody to schedule an appointment. So doctors who don't have that need to have an app, an easier way to schedule an appointment so your wife doesn't have to talk to them. Not necessarily a AI generated person, but I mean, that would work. But then some people are like, oh, dude, it was so close. I couldn't tell. I can tell the video. I can tell the sound, but I've been on the phone for my whole, for existence of, I'm listening to what people say on the phone and other times. So I can hear the difference in that voice. I can still hear it, where other people say, oh man, I didn't know. It's like, how could you not know? The speed of the cadence and everything was just off just enough to where I could still tell it was not real.
Because most of us aren't paying close enough attention.
We don't listen. We want to talk over the other person. We want to get our point across. We're not listening to the other side. I sold by the phone for over 18 years, and I had to connect with that person before anything else. And that's by listening to the other side, listening to everything over there. And that was the difference why I can do it. And but stating that, there's going to be people who have no idea it's not a real person.
I was teaching at a mastermind 3 months ago, and I did a video, and I got up and I played the video. Right, so it's a 2-day mastermind, and so I get up and so I'm in my studio now, and most of the people know the look of my studio, and so I play a video of me in my studio talking about what happened yesterday. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the mastermind I live in DC. The mastermind was in Arizona. And I played a video, and I started by saying, I flew home last night and shot this video for y'all. And people in the room were like, how did you fly home?
I think it wasn't driven.
Okay. It wasn't driven.
Because they would have known.
They would have known. Perry would have known, for sure.
Yeah.
But my point is, to your point, yes. Like, even at times when it's obviously absurd.
Right. Well, that we've learned how to manipulate people, how to get to people to do things. I was talking to a guy yesterday who the same way with the medical, and he's into the protection side of it, making sure that you can't break it. And he's like, this is, what people do. We figure ways to get people to trust us and this and that. And that's what these things will eventually do. Because, Brian Galke with his facial stuff, I'm like, if you could get an AI to just quickly take a picture of you or find you somewhere on the web, search your face, and then you could actually know how to show you video, show you certain things that's what you wanted, because they know who you are. And that'll be coming if it's not almost already here.
No, it's already here. Yeah, it's here. The thing, it's a thing, right? It's a tool, it's a fact.
Mhm.
And a hammer is great when it's hitting a nail. It's bad when it's in the back of your head.
Or hitting a screw.
And so it's about using it ethically, and that's where the challenge is going to come in for all of this stuff. I mean, it's the same thing that happened when the internet was born,
Right. No, that's the same thing I
right?
tell
There were
people.
people
This is
who,
.com falling all over again. So
yeah. Um, so the ethical side of this is always going to be a challenge because they're bad actors.
Right.
And anyone who says, "Oh, it's all about manipulation," everything humans do is about manipulation.
Or
Like,
persuasion.
yeah, and use whatever word you want to use. At the end of the day, we're trying to do what? Get someone else to do what we want them to do.
Well, the difference between the two, where I take a persuasion, is getting somebody to help them make the decision they want to make anyway. Manipulation is getting them to do what you want them to do. That's my take on it. And this is no different than if you go back to the 80s and 90s and watch some of those movies, Glengarry Glen Ross,
Yep.
Boiler Room,
Yep.
Wolf of Wall Street, the newer one,
It's
and
all
then
the same.
yeah,
It's just
they're manipulating. It's just they figured a way to do it with a human. Now we have an artificial intelligence that they're trying to get as conniving as some of these other people were. So,
it's all the
and I don't
same.
mean that wrong. So
No, it's the reality of it. And that's where I really believe community is going to be the thing that saves us, because we as humans were made for community, and we're going to yearn for that. As we get further and further and further away from being able to trust what we see, we're going to have to rely more and more on the collective thought of community and the camaraderie of community.
have you listened to the book, or 12 Months to a Million?
I haven't.
Okay, so this is Ryan Daniel Moran, or
Uh-huh.
Moran. I just finished it, and they're talking about how these products, they find the micro community, the smaller communities, and in the same thing, like I don't know. I don't know if David, there's a bar that just came out called David, and it is high
Okay.
in protein and all this different stuff. Well, I heard about it on the Huberman podcast, who then talked about it because the guy that helped start another podcast was part of it. And what I'm getting is that's a totally unique community about people who are trying to do better with themselves, even though there's so many bars out there, and they're talking about these are the communities. And this is what you're kind of talking about too. Because we talked earlier, you have your own mastermind and you have other
Yeah.
stuff. And I think it's really important to grow those type of communities for people to be successful. You need your own community to be there. It's like the raving fans they used to talk about. It's just another term for it. Now it's your community instead of just raving fans.
And here's why it works. And I'll even one up you a little bit there, Ed, and say it's even more than raving, because now community is connecting the raving fans.
Right.
Whereas in raving fans, they could have all been individual and have a
Mhm.
one-to-one relationship with you. And now we want to bring them together, right? And here's
Mhm.
why. Um, so Facebook and I forget the other research, another big research body, did a worldwide study. And in this worldwide study of people aged 13 and older, this is one of the few truly worldwide studies, they discovered that 60% of people classify themselves as lonely. In the world, age 13 and over. That's scary.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about that, and you realize, what does it take to be lonely? When I'm lonely means I don't feel like I belong,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
so we have 60% of the people in this world feel like they don't belong to anything. They have nowhere to go. And this is the beauty of community. Community solves belonging. You can't have love if you don't belong. You can't have safety. So Maslow in his hierarchy, I've been saying this for a while, I believe his hierarchy is wrong. He put belonging on the third rung. I believe it's the base. With food, with water.
I got one more to add in there, purpose.
Well, purpose
Right.
can set, yeah.
Because I deal with vets, and when we get out of the service, we lose our purpose. And I'm finding there's a lot of young kids who, especially males, who don't have a purpose, and that's why they have the problems they have. They don't know what their purpose is yet. Just like we didn't, I don't know but I didn't know my purpose and what my plan was for the future, forever. But you need to have a purpose, and I think it adds in the same thing with community, with what you're talking about. You have that, you're lonely, but you also, if you had a purpose, then you might be not as lonely because you know where you're going and what you need to be done. So I understand that whole thing about being lonely, because there's a lot of people who, especially people who own businesses, you heard the thing, it's lonely at the top. It is so lonely at the top because there's not other people who can take off in the middle of the day, go do stuff, that kind of stuff, who own their own businesses. And there's a lot of loneliness, even with the high end people who need the same thing, other communities also. So I totally get what you're talking about.
Yes. That's why I believe community is the future, and the future of marketing, the future of business, the future of communication, right? And so you say purpose, and communities align around purpose, right? I join a community because I believe in its purpose. And so, yes, I'm with you there. Like they come, right? So I get attracted. So even with the bar people, right? I'm on a weight loss journey, and that is giving me some level of purpose. And now I'm aligning with other people around that same thing, building the community.
Yeah. Because people don't realize, that's how I done it, is it's been high protein, and so I've been on Ozempic. I hit 291 after I was on president of my Rotary, and I tried a month, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to fight this. I researched everything, and I'm like, you know what, this will work for me. I'm going to do it differently. I lost 30 pounds in the first 6 weeks. And it was because I did high protein diet, where a lot of people are still eating cheeseburgers, taking 2 bites or 3 bites. And it's like, no, I'm not on this because I'm lazy. I'm on this because I wanted to help me jumpstart it and get going. And so I've researched so much stuff. And then when this bar came out, I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy those bars, because I do a lot of liquid protein that has nothing in it, but it's just liquid. And it's like huge difference in my diet. And it's a matter, like you just said, it's a purpose. My purpose was, I got to get back to where I used to be, because I can't be this way anymore.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. So, and it's a David bar?
Yeah. DAVID.
Yeah. I haven't heard of it.
It's brand new. Just came out.
I'll check it out.
Do you listen to the Huberman podcast?
Yes, some. Yeah.
David Atiba, I think, is the other one that does the performance guy. He's the one that was involved with the bar. That's why I heard it. Because at that point when I was walking, so I started listening to those podcasts first when I was walking, went through all that stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm bored. I got to listen to books or something else. You know how it is. It's like, okay. And I got back to, because when you first get in this journey of what we're trying to do, you don't have the energy. Walking's about it. You can't lift. You can't do certain things at the time. Now I lift, and then I've taken my walking down. I do more rucking, which I carry a 50-pound backpack and do it 3 to 4 days a week. Yeah. So.
Gotcha.
But it's all about finding that. Again, one of the things I want to say, Steve Sims connected me with all this, but he has a mastermind that got me. I prefer the people in the mastermind to him. And this is not a knock on him. It's just because they asked me, why do you keep coming? The speakers on the stage are great, but everybody in the audience they're just like me. They're on this journey. They could be up on stage, but we're all on this journey together to build our businesses and make it better. And that's why these things, and I don't think people understood that. I didn't understand that, right? The whole community aspect of what you got a podcast, build your community through your podcast. I do, veterans build, I did an Operation Fire Walk last year, which was for veterans to walk on fire at the end of the night. And it was a huge event, huge community going to be built out of that this year because we're doing our second one, May 3rd, 2025. And it's going to be, you have to have walked on Colt in order to join the community. So
Wow.
that because it'd be like-minded, just like everybody else. You can't join this community ahead of time because you're not going to be like other people. You're not going to understand that you got rid of your limiting beliefs and now you can find your purpose. And so so there's a lot of stuff that's like you're building that's just brand new. That's, it takes time and
Yes.
understanding what direction to go. Bottom lines with your marketing that you have a company that until you find your perfect client, you can't do anything. Well, you can.
Right.
You just spend a lot of money to the wrong people.
Yeah,
You
you just be spinning top in mud, as my mother would say. Yeah, which is a bad place to be.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a little bit longer. I want to talk about your community you're building. You started your own mastermind because you said you go to other people's, which I have too. And it's been a few things I've wanted to do. But it's been, again, it takes time to build these things. These things aren't done overnight. My firewalk was done in 6 months, 4 months fighting with the city and 2 months putting it together. So you can, it's just not recommended.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I started the community based upon what would have been helpful for me 20 odd years ago. Right. The community is called the You Belong Network. Go figure. Because it's all about belonging. And it's about the fact that I went through most of my life up until early 40s feeling like I didn't belong. And had successes and failures. A lot of people looked at it and saw the glitz and the glamour, but it was a really lonely journey. It was a really hard journey. And it doesn't need to be. And it wasn't until I really started understanding that loneliness and understanding belonging and the cycle of going from belong to believe to becoming that I was like, holy crap, this is what I needed 20 odd years ago. And so say again?
But it wasn't there.
It wasn't.
We couldn't build those communities back then like you can.
We couldn't.
Yeah. What people have access to today is so overwhelming compared to what we had back then. Unless you had AOL, then you had that whole community of AOL.
Which by itself was probably not something you wanted anyway. But
I came across somebody with an AOL email the other day, just so you
know. I run into those every now and again too, and I'm like, how and why?
How are they still around?
Yeah. But anyway, we digress.
Sure.
And so it's for entrepreneurs. It's entrepreneurs who know that they're called for more. See, and that's the thing. It's like when you know that you were called to be a superhero, and I don't mean that in any egotistical way, but I mean in that you were created to do something that is going to have major impact for others. That's what a superhero is, right? Very often when you live that life, most people look at you like you're strange. And to tie it back into what you're saying before, if I have really clear purpose, most people are going to think I'm strange because most people don't have clear purpose.
Right. And you need clear purpose to know where you want to go.
So you're an entrepreneur, you have that clear purpose. Yes. And you know that you're supposed to do great things, but everywhere you go, you're surrounded by people who are not there. You walk into rooms and people look at you and they want advice from you. And you're always like, well, who's pouring into me? Right. And it's not about conceit because you're willing to share, you're willing to give. You love to do it, but you're at the same time, you pour out, but nothing's pouring in, and you're feeling empty. And so we created this community where you can belong, where everyone who's here understands what that reality is like. We're all building different things. We all have different purposes. And I may not agree with what your purpose is, but I don't have to. I understand what you're going through, and I agree with your journey. And I want you to succeed, because that's what you were called. And when what I was called to do, I got no interest. But I want you to succeed. Right?
Mhm.
So it's different in that it's mastermind-esque, in that we create environments, and we create environments of transformation.
Gotcha. Have you had an event yet?
So we're doing our first one next year. We everything's been virtual so far. We'll be doing our first one in Vegas next year.
And so people wouldn't have thought you didn't think you belonged because of your background. That's why I asked you earlier when you said about your parents and everybody else who's been in the business and did all this, that sometimes people can feel like I threw my daughter in there about how she felt.
Yeah.
So the question is, and I don't know if you thought about this, but why you didn't feel you belonged.
Oh, absolutely. I've thought a ton about this. I'm not even a little bit. I've thought a lot about this.
I mean, because for me, I would have never thought that about you. I know a bunch of people who know you would have never thought about that about you going. They'd be going, you belong here more than we do. But I think a lot of us also, which people don't get, is people look at us like, wow, you're successful. You're this, you're that. And you're like, okay, well, I was just that same guy 2 years ago who couldn't pay his bills or other stuff. And now I can. And then there's sometimes that, as a business owner, that you have some tough months. There's stuff like that happens all the way through when you're building businesses. But people think just because you're successful that you don't have any of these other things.
Yeah. So I was born in Trinidad. I came here when I was 9. In Trinidad, I was, by 9, you haven't hit puberty yet, but I was always tall. I always looked a certain way. And I was uncoordinated. A boy who looks athletic but is uncoordinated in a country like Trinidad, who's big into soccer, is a bad thing. And I was always fast. And so I was always the last to be picked to play any sport at recess, and often didn't get picked at all. And so I spent most of my recesses playing with marbles by myself. Now, at 9, I leave Trinidad and I come here. I get here, and in Trinidad, when you have an exam, the teacher reads off who had the 5 students who have the best grades in the class. They're celebrated and everyone else is shunned. Like literally.
I understand. There's no participation trophies is what they're saying.
None. These are the cream of the crop, right? And I was always in that 5. I get to this country, and teacher asks a question in class, and I raise my hand. I want to answer the question because that's what we do. But that's not what this country, at least where I was, did. And so the other boys didn't appreciate that because I was making the boys look bad, because the girls were like, who's this new kid who's smart? And so at 9, I was a kid getting shoved in a locker. At 9, because we came here and under the circumstances, I think, my mother was broke when she came here. I was having egg salad for lunch. So I'm the new kid with an accent who's a smart kid who's taking the girls, or at least getting attention from the girls, who shows up with an egg salad sandwich and made the entire classroom stink. Yeah, I wasn't very well liked.
I love egg salad.
I can't eat it to this day.
Well, that's okay. So for us, it was tomato sandwiches. All right.
Okay. Well, they didn't have. They
So
didn't
we
have any
had
smell.
all these tomatoes, but we didn't have anything, right? So, oh, you're hungry? Make a sandwich. Tomato sandwich. There ain't no sandwich, but you couldn't say that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Um,
I was dirt road poor, dude, especially after my dad died at 12. Parents all
I,
threw me. So,
I understand. It was tough those first years here, in when we moved here as well, and yeah, so that actually started my fitness journey of getting strong, because I figured if I can get strong, then nobody will mess with me, right?
mhm.
At that point, puberty started to hit as well, and the coordination came. Now all of a sudden, I was the first kid picked. Now all of a sudden, I was a star soccer player. Now all of a sudden, I was the guy people wanted to know, and that was an interesting shift in paradigm. I started playing football, and from my very first practice, everyone said, "Kid, you're going to be special." By the time I got to high school, they said, "Kid, you're going to the NFL." Um, but that put a target on my back, because I was a freshman that they wanted to play varsity, and there were seniors who had been waiting their turn. And the seniors made it very uncomfortable and made sure to let the coaches know this kid ain't ready. Right.
Right.
Um, but then I was still different, because I was the only one on the team lifting weights. I was benching 300 pounds as a freshman in high school. I was the only one on the team lifting weights. I was different, but outcast, because nobody was like, yeah, you're too different. Okay. And so I just never fit, because now I have opportunities to go back to Trinidad, and I get back to Trinidad, and everyone in Trinidad says, "Oh, you're an American." When I'm here, everyone says, "You're not an American." And I'm shunned. So I go to where I came from, I'm shunned. I'm here and I'm shunned. Right.
Right.
I was in a magnet program. So I was a star athlete in a magnet program, the very first one. They didn't have another one before me. The kids in the magnet program didn't even do sports, much less to be on the front page of the Washington Post. And so again, I didn't fit. And so it's just
So the
been
theme here is you never fitted. Is that the theme?
right.
I mean,
And so
yeah,
so that always kept me feeling like I didn't belong.
right. Until you found other misfits like yourself who run businesses.
And even when I started business, because I
Right.
started my first legal business at 17, because I say that, and we were doing stuff before. It wasn't illegal stuff, but
I
it
understand.
wasn't.
I
Yeah.
didn't take it as pot or drugs or
Yeah.
other stuff. Yeah.
Um,
You're talking like formational of a business.
yeah. At 17.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they say, when they have people who go, okay, do you have this, and they're talking about ADD, autism and all that stuff. Have you ever been in a room when they say, okay, autism, and they say, do you have this, and this, and people raise their hands, and everybody raises their hands, and they say, now you're all on the autism scale, and they're all business owners. So what I'm getting at is, I think the fact that most successful people are outcasts because they have to be. And I wasn't trying to take all your thunder away, but I'm like going, okay, I totally will get where he's at, because I wasn't the kid in high school that ever, the same thing. I was the same thing. And then, I get into military and I start riding bikes and I become this, huge cyclist and everything else, and stuff like that. And then you're different because there's nobody else who does that before. And I totally, well, so how do people find out about your mastermind if they want to be part of it? Are you looking for people, or are you like, we have how does that all work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate the question. So we're extremely selective, and it's actually an invite only, believe it or not.
All right. So we're going
And
to
here's
go
how you get
now.
an
That
invite.
was it. You guys
Right.
are you're not invited. And so don't worry about it.
Well, here's how you get an invite. We have a website, and it's called Atiba's Dinner with Friends. So we're all about experiences. And I travel to cities all across the country.
I wish we
And I
had more
host
time to
these
get
dinners.
into your dinner with friends, because that is a great, that's a huge, I know all about it. We've never been together to have dinner with friends, but that is amazing thing. And I'd love to get into that a little bit more, but um, we're way over my normal time that I do these because I like to have people have the time. So we're going to have to do a part 2 with you, and we'll start with the dinner with friends on the next one.
Let's do that, Ed.
All right. So you do the dinner with friends, and then you invite people to
So you get invited to dinner with friends, and that's really the entrance into the community and seeing how we work and the difference in the environment that we create, right? Because it's not, our dinners aren't what you think. This is not a dinner that you've been to before. It's an experience. So that's Atiba's, my first name, Atiba's DWF, dinner with friends, DWF.com.
All right. And then for your business, are you looking for helping more people, or is that
Absolutely.
only too?
Absolutely. So if you're in a place where you are a professional and you know that you do a great service and you're looking to attract more of the right customer and you've been having a hard time, okay, you're doing marketing, you're on social media, but it's just not gaining traction. Go to contentcoach.social. That's contentcoach.social. Okay. I've got a free gift there for you because the thing that you're probably missing is you're not actually attracting your ideal customer. So let's help you define that. And then that starts the process. And from there, we can talk about how we can actually help you create messaging that moves your ideal customer along a journey so that they show up with credit card in hand on your doorstep.
There you go. Atiba, it's been great having you on the show. I could talk to you for more than what we did, but unfortunately, these are all set up for time periods because and there's a reason. I want to get to the meat of everything, and I still think we should go deeper on a few other things. So I'm gonna send you a link to get you signed back up and come back on if you're okay with that.
Absolutely, Ed. Let's do it, buddy.
All right. Again, Atiba, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you being here, and all his information will be in the show notes.
Thank you.